The ignorance about the many aspects of Islam, including the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, is only surpassed by the outright bias and prejudice about them in the West. There are obviously many historical, political, and religious reasons for this.
But the religion was not spread by the sword. And just as the British or the French conquered the whole world in the 19th century, the Arabs conquered part of their known world in the 7th century. But that's a far cry from saying Islam was spread by the sword. Islam was mostly spread by Muslims who went and lived in different countries. And the reason why the notion is that Islam is spread by the sword is that historians, for the most part in the 19th century, were very Eurocentric. And there was the old animosity that dates back, I suppose, to the Crusades, to the Ottoman Empire, the belief that everything that comes from the East, which means everything from North Africa to China, we're all lumped together as the same, is bad, and therefore there couldn't possibly be anything good coming from there. So it's a racist attitude and a Eurocentric attitude.
Any claim that Islam may have to being a bona fide religion can be easily dismissed when one begins with the false assumption that the Quran is not really the word of God, and when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is characterized as the disseminator of false revelation. He then can be easily seen as the Antichrist. These views have not only been historically prevalent in the West, but unfortunately persist even to this day.
I don't like the way they treat their women. It's despicable.
They're weird. They dress in funny clothes.
They worship the man. They have the man on earth as their God.
The Prophet Muhammad is easily the most maligned religious personality in the whole of history, but he is also the most influential. Muhammad bin Abdullah, or the son of Abdullah, remains a decisive figure in human history. In a recently published book by Michael Hart, The 100 Most Influential People in History, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, tops the list, even though the author of this book has again been less than fair in evaluating the life of the Prophet Muhammad.
The significance of the Prophet's life as distinct to other major religious figures was precisely his living in society and being a model for all different walks of life. The Prophet is revered not only as a legislator and a statesman and as a leader, but also as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as someone who could be trusted. I've seen depictions of the kind of reverence that Muslims pay to the Prophet, where he is shown to be the role model for the orphan. He himself, of course, was orphaned at an early age. He is the role model also for the rich person who has power. And in every aspect of Islamic life, I think that the Prophet acts as a model and as a guide for how human life should be lived. So I think that in terms of his complete coverage of human life, this is the way in which he stands out from other religious leaders who often advocated withdrawal from the world for the times in which they lived. One other point I'd make is that Muhammad has been ignored to some extent by Christian religious thought, and very few religious thinkers in the Christian world have even attempted to deal with the Prophet. The Vatican II Declaration of the Catholic Church, although it praised Muslims for their reverence for the Virgin Mary and for their lives of prayer and dedication, failed to mention the Prophet completely. Only, as far as I know, one Christian theologian, Hans Küng in Switzerland, has made any serious attempt to discuss Muhammad in terms of Christian thought.
Dante's achievement in the Divine Comedy was to seamlessly combine the realistic portrayal of mundane reality with a universal and eternal system of Christian values. What Dante the Pilgrim sees as he walks through the Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise is a unique vision of the judgment. Mahometto, or Mohammed, turns up in Canto 28 of the Inferno. He is located in the 8th of the 9 circles of hell, near a circle of gloomy ditches surrounding Saturn's stronghold in hell. Thus, before Dante reaches Mohammed, he passes through circles containing people whose sins are of a lesser order: the lustful, the avaricious, the gluttonous, the heretic, the wrathful, the suicidal, the blasphemous. After Muhammad, there are only the falsifiers and the treacherous. These include Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, before one arrives at the very bottom of hell, which is where Satan himself is to be found. Dante's account of Muhammad's punishment for his sins is even more disgusting, and we shall not attempt to go into it here. Even if we leave aside the distorted and hateful parody of the prophet by Dante as something belonging to the Dark Ages, we can still find plenty of material in Western literature that is equally prejudiced towards the prophet and his works. Books such as Washington Irving's Mohammed and His Successors has on its title page an imaginary painting of the prophet with a sword in one hand and the Quran in the other. Sir William Mear, who has also translated the Quran, is more explicit. The sword of Muhammad and the Quran are the most fatal enemies of civilization, liberty, and truth which the world has ever known. Unquote. For a Muslim, the assimilation and imitation of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as illustrated in the Sirah, the actions of the Prophet, and the Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, are essential. Without it, there is no Islam.
Hadith are the reports about the sayings and actions of the Prophet, which were collected and developed, given farther and farther from generation to generation among the Muslims. And in the 9th century, they were very carefully sifted, and 6 great collection of such hadiths, of words, were put together, which are second in importance only to the Quran. And the process of selection was very careful. One did not scrutinize so much the content, but the line of transmitters from the person who tells it now back to the Prophet, or at least to the closest companions of the Prophet, in order to guarantee authenticity.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us this week on Islam.